I had dinner at what most people would say is the most difficult restaurant to get into in New York City without a reservation, just Optimism, and I did it twice in 1 week. Interviewing millionaires, I've learned, or our guests that have made $1 million of personal income inside of a 12-month period, is that many of them have this one attribute, and this attribute is optimism. They believe that when they set out to create something, that it's going to work out, whether it's start the business or take down a big, task or go to a new level in their company, whatever it may be, they have this foundational belief, whatever that is, they have this foundational belief that it's all going to work out. They're not naive to speed bumps and, plans getting derailed, but they believe that they can go and make it a successful venture. I want to tell you a story about how I traveled across the country and got into a restaurant that reminds me of my dad that passed away a few years ago. I'd flown from Arizona to New York. It was late at night. The flight was delayed at 8 o'clock. It took me 2 hours to get 13 miles. I drove straight to Carbone on a Sunday evening. I walked in. They almost laughed me out the door. Recently on a podcast, I'd heard this, this line that I wanted to try out. And the line was, "What are the chances?" And then you make a request. So I walk in and I said, "What are the chances that a guy that just flew across the country can eat at the restaurant that reminds him of his dad? That's one of his most favorite restaurants in the world." And they looked at me and said, "Not good." And so I started throwing a little charm or charisma, and I said, "Not good like 1 in 100." They picked up on the joke and said, "Not good like 1 in a million." And you know what I said next? "So you're telling me there's a chance." And over the next 5 to 7 minutes, I stayed positive and I just started creating. I'll tell you this, in those situations, oftentimes you can create it with money. If you want to spend $200-$500, whatever that is, you can create. I'm speaking more about going into a situation that just doesn't seem to have a likely outcome. I understood what they were going to tell me. They were going to tell me no. She had to have told me no at least 7 times. And I just stayed the course with the same belief system that I wasn't going to drive there and it wasn't going to work out. Long story short, 30 minutes later, I had the dinner I intended to have. Now, getting into a restaurant has little significance in the grand scheme of things, but my mindset around the situation, I believe, has big impacts. I'm thinking of a conversation I had with Dusty Williams where he spoke about his mindset and what he developed around how he just naturally thought about the world.
I was built different. I knew a confidence or an arrogance about me that was just, I was confident that I could figure anything out. And I just realized that, to where it was almost like my whole life I just got, "Oh, you're so prideful." I'm just like, no, I just really believe that I can do this. It was just a self-belief that came naturally.
Fast forward a couple of days, I played some historic golf. I went and played Shinnecock and Friars Head, and we're sitting on the cliffs of Friars Head, and I'm with a group of people that are up to stuff in the world. Big business owners, all these kind of things. And somehow Carbone comes up. And I smiled and I said, "Oh, I ate there this week." And one of the guys looked at me and he sat up and he was like, How did you eat there this week? "My daughter's lived in New York for 6 months and I haven't been able to get her in. I'd be the coolest dad in the world." I said, "Well, I think I could help you with that." "How?" And he looked at me and said, "Who are you?" And I laughed it off, but I'd made a connection with the decision maker at the restaurant. And so I shot him a text and asked if I could get another reservation. They said yes. He called his daughter and said, "Hey, I got you a reservation at Carbone." And she reminded him, unfortunately, that she was on a flight to the UK. But we were there with a few other people, and my buddy from Canada and his wife were in town, and I offered the reservation to them. Long story short, they went and had a great experience, which turned into him checking out my social media. He saw what I did for work, and he shot me a thank you text and said, "Hey, when I get home, I'd love to hear more about your fund and what you do." Now, that's what I mean by the getting into a restaurant has little significance. But having optimism around a daunting task or a tall order, I think can have a huge trickle-down effect in whatever you're trying to create. We're going to accumulate all of this data from our guests on the podcast. And I know I can already tell, only 25 episodes in, that one of the key factors to creating $1 million inside of a 12-month period is this core belief, this foundational principle around optimism, that if you set out to something, that you can make it work, that you can create it, that although times get tough and it doesn't look like it's going to work out, that you can stay optimistic around your goals and that you can get there. And it's my job to go and get as many interviews as I can of optimistic people that are creating in the world. And I hope it works out for you.